Hello and welcome. My name is Kasozi. We're going to look at the multi-band compressor. And we're using Logic, but the techniques that you find here, you can migrate to any other DAW. The multi-band compressor that we're going to use here has two sections to it. One part is a 4-band compressor, and another part is a 4-band expander. Yeah, but we're going to concentrate on the compressor side of things. This one is going to be broken into two parts. One part talks about the multi-band compressor as it's used on stems, groups, and on the master bass. The other part talks about using it on a vocal. It is worth mentioning that if you're looking for a short, quick fix video, this is not it. This video is taken from a class that went on for about 2 hours, and I condensed it down to about 30 minutes or so. Now, if you've got the patience, let's dive in. Hello, Kaz here. We're back in the box. And today we're going to look at the multi-band compressor, particularly the one here in Logic. But whatever we do here will be applicable, or most of it will be applicable in other DAWs or third-party plugins. And I'm going to apply it on the music track. So basically where all the music is going. And here it is. Call it up, and there it is. Now I'm going to enlarge this to 150. I guess some of you are looking at this stuff on the phone, so it looks overstretched, so it's not clear. I'm going to go backwards to 125. Yeah, I think that's better. So these are normally used for mastering or pre-mastering, using it as part of your mastering chain. But they work very well on grouped tracks, or in this case, even on the output of a mix, of a main mix, as a pre-mastering stage, so to speak. And it's in that context that I'm going to look at it at the beginning. I'll keep saying multi-band compressor, but Logic calls it a multipressor here. But we know what we're talking about. All a multi-band compressor is just a normal compressor. If I switch all these off, you see there are 4 different parts to it here. 1, 2, 3, 4. If I switch 2, 3, and 4 off, I've just got one band from the lowest to the highest. You see here it says 20 hertz, and then goes all the way to 20 kilohertz. Basically now I've got one compressor. Just like any normal compressor, it has got a ratio here, it has got an attack, a release, and we've got a threshold and even a makeup gain here. It's just a normal compressor, but it's broken up in different bands. So you can have it as a 2-band where you say, okay, I can compress from 20 hertz up to whatever you've put there, like 160 in this case. You can see if I change it, then I'm able to adjust the bands there. So it can compress this stuff separately from how it compresses this. Because in some cases, you don't want to compress things all at the same time. Normally, we compress like a signal in its whole entirety. But in this case, we are able to break up the signal into different frequency bands so that we can handle the low end alone, and perhaps the low mids alone, and then high mids alone if I add this part, and then the highs alone, so that we have different ways of actually controlling each of them. And you can even decide not to deal with one of them. So you may bypass one, for example. Yeah. Or not do anything to anyone, or you leave its ratio at 1:1, so what comes in is what comes out. A multiband gives you more freedom to be particular about what exactly you're controlling. One thing I really like about having a multiband compressor is that the low end is not going to have energy that is going to trigger a compressor that is compressing things in the top mids or in the highs, and you're not going to have like energy within the mids, as sometimes they can be, especially with a voice or a snare. You're not going to have energy in these mids that is going to actually trigger a compressor that is compressing the highs or the lows. Everything has its independent way of being dealt with. That's the main advantage of having a multiband. This means to me that it's not actually only usable on master basses or on mastering. At this stage, we're using it on all the music going out, but after this, I'll show you how to also exploit it on normal tracks. Okay, so here I'm going to play the tune as it is. It's not a great mix. It's just a demo, but we can still see exactly what this multiband does. So what I can do, I can solo through the different ranges, which allows me to analyze each range, and then I see what I need to do with it, if I need to do anything. That is the lower mids, high mids, yeah. Even in its initial setting, like this is the default setting that it has, even in this default setting, it's already doing something. I'm sure you could see it. It was minimally doing something. In the analysis there, I thought the low end was weak. It wasn't like pumping enough. First of all, what I'm going to do is to lower this range a bit to about 130. Let's have a listen to what I'm dealing with. So I want this to pump. Normally, you would want a ratio that is quite subtle, like 2 to 1, and 2 point something to 1, like not to go crazy. But I'm gonna accentuate it because I want you to hear the results easier. So I'm gonna take it to 3 to 1. And then make the attack a bit slower. And then what I'm gonna do is bring the threshold down so that it kicks in soon enough. Then make up the gain. I'm knocking at your door every morning, hoping that you can open up. Rita, you got me on my knees. I'm serenading, hoping that you can hear. You can hear already the difference, that the bass is punchier. When I switch on and off, you hear the difference that the bass, the low end, is a little bit punchier than what it was already. I can move on to this area here, the third band here, where the voice is very prominent. Also the riff of the guitar. Let's have a listen to what that is doing. I'm knocking at your door. So I'm gonna contain that a bit. I don't want it to come out more. I'm good with where it was, but in terms, but maybe it needs to be contained on some bits. So I'm looking for the threshold that can grab it. Hoping that you can hear. I'm knocking at your door. Rita, I'm knocking at your door every morning. But I'm not gonna do anything with the ratio. Let's have a listen. Rita, you got me on my knees. I'm serenading. I've over pushed it inside. So I need to make up the gain a bit. I'm knocking at your door. Rita, I'm knocking at your door every morning, hoping that you can open up. Rita, you got me on my knees. So you hear there, I pressed them in a bit, but now they have a little bit more clarity. It sounds cooler to me. And what I'm going to do with this one here, I'm not really going to do anything with this part, but let's have a listen. That's the part where things are kind of a bit mushy. I'm knocking at your door. So the lack of clarity is coming from these ranges around 200, 250. So I'm knocking at your door. I'm gonna again get a threshold that actually affects it. Rita, you got me on my knees, but not too much. Hoping that you can hear. Oh, I'm knocking at your door. Oh, Rita, I'm knocking at your door every morning. So I'm not really touching the attack and the release. I'm liking what they're doing. I don't want it quicker. It's fine at this stage as it is. If anything, most times you want to have it a little bit slower so that it's not so immediate in its approach, because you don't want it to be noticeable that things are being done. Then finally, what I'm going to do, I'm going to use maybe start from 10. So I'm going to raise this up to go to like 9K or something, 9.4K or 9400 hertz, which is like 9,400 hertz, which is the same as 9.4K. Before I even start, because I've changed this band, the width of this band, let me first listen to things as they are now before I move on to the high band. I changed it because I want to affect a thinner band at the top. Of course, by changing this crossover point, then this band got wider. First have a listen to see what this is sounding like as is now. Oh, I'm knocking at your door. Oh, Rita, I'm knocking at your door every morning. Okay. Yeah, I like it, but it's not great. But what you could also do, and like to bring out some of these bright features, is now solo this and have a listen to it and see what we can do with it. So the frequencies are there. It sounds good, but I don't think I necessarily want to compress it as such. But the good thing with this one, with the multipressor here, is that you see this lower section that I hadn't talked about. It is actually more of an expander. So whilst on the top side we've got a compressor, that's something that contains the dynamics. On the lower side we've got an expander, which basically lets the dynamics go free. Like it expands out the dynamics. And if you haven't seen the video about an expander, how expanders work, perhaps have a look at that first before you go ahead to understand this, or as soon as you finish this, maybe have a look at that, then you'll understand better and come back to this video. What I'm going to do is basically to expand the dynamics in this one so that we get those things that are loud within this band get louder, and then those things that are quiet in this band get quieter. That's what's going to happen here. And so I set the threshold, and then I want it to get low enough to be below the loud things inside this frequency band. And then anything that will be above that level that I've set here will sound louder. I'm going to use that voice. I'm going to use that voice as my litmus. So what I'm doing is setting this threshold here, which is not the same as this one here. You see, when you move the compressor one, it's the one above. So I don't want to set that. I want to set the one below. Yeah. Because this one relates to the expander. So if I move that, because now the expander is on a ratio of 1:1, that means whatever comes in is exactly what goes out. So I need to change this to reflect something that is different, like it has some effect on it. Okay, so let's try that with everything on. I'm knocking at your door. See if I bypass it. Then when it's on. I'm knocking at your, like the threshold a bit lower, and then a bit more expansion by raising this ratio. I'm knocking at your door. If I bypass it, I'm knocking at your door. And it's on. I'm knocking at your door. So you hear those snaps there. They get a little bit sharper, and also the clarity of that vocal, like the crispy element on the vocal is a little bit more present. And I can push it like to be wild. I'm gonna push it like really crazy so that you can really hear that difference. I'm knocking at your door. Rita, I'm knocking at your door every morning. Yeah, that is pretty much like the multiband in a nutshell. You can play with all these things. It's quite easy to actually work out. It looks like it's complicated, but it isn't, because all the controls that you see here to do with the compressor, those are things you would already have seen within a normal compressor. Threshold, ratio, attack, release, the normal stuff. If you have gone through the expander, or at least have a look at the video for the expander, then you also know what to do with this. It will be very simple. Indeed, makeup gain, very clear. The crossover area is just basically where you set the width of your bands. And of course, there are 3 crossover areas, 1, 2, 3, and they're reflected here. So it's not that difficult. For me personally, for the makeup gain as a whole, all over the thing, I tend to use this gain outside that takes out. So to balance between what was coming in and what's going out, I use this, not the individual ones. I tend to use the individuals in a way like to mix sounds within, the loudness within. Maybe this could be wrong, but I'm using it a little bit like they're faders. Like I've got 4 tracks to control, but each track has a band. So for example, if I wanted these highs to be a bit crispier, then I might actually raise this gain by maybe 1 dB. Or 2 even. Yeah. And in effect, I would have done like a kind of shelf of sorts, you get, because remember there's a crossover section. So as it crosses over, so that means this is not exactly at 9,400 hertz. It takes a moment across. That's why it's a crossover. It's like a smooth path between them. It's sort of like a machete cut right there. There's a smoothness between the bands crossing over. So this is before. I'm knocking at your door. And this is after. I'm knocking at your door. Rita, I'm knocking at your door every morning. So these are slight changes, like in every band. And it's not about getting things to be loud at this point, because you can do that with a limit at the end of things. There are other ways to get things louder. And in any case, if you're mastering something, it's about increments, like one thing at a time. So each processor that you're going to apply is going to like do an extra bit slowly by slowly. Since I haven't got the highs to be as crispy as I want, this is where things like an exciter come in. Look for an exciter, like within Logic, it's inside specialized, so you find it here. We have already looked at what an exciter does, so have a look at that video. All it's going to do is to add extra harmonics, I'll call them overtones, that are above whatever frequency I set with this. They will add character to the piece of music that is playing. At this point, I'll leave it at around 3K. That will do for me. I'll start to push up and down to see what textures I'm getting. Oh, I'm knocking at your door. Oh, it's a bit too much.
Rita, I'm knocking at your door every morning, hoping that you can open up. Rita, you got me on my knees, I'm serenading.
Let me check another color.
That you can hear. Oh, I'm knocking at your door.
You can see when you switch in and out that you can really clearly hear what they're contributing.
I'm knocking at your door every morning, hoping that you can open up. Rita, you got me on my knees, I'm serenading.
Okay, yeah, so that one has given me a few more highs. It has like excited the higher end of stuff by adding some textures in the higher frequencies. If you haven't seen the exciter video, you should check it out so that you can be able to understand what is going on there. I'm going to show another way to use the multiband compressor, but directly on a track. For example, to use it as if you're mixing. So we're going to apply one on the vocal here. Bam. Now, I stole this technique from Tony Maserati, and he was using the C4, which is by Waves. He was using this Waves C4. He was using this, which is also a multi-band compressor. It's the same thing going on here. The difference here, it's not bogged down with an expander down here or whatever. I'm not going to use that. Since I'm demonstrating this using stock plugins, I'm going to stick to the stock plugin that comes within the DAW. I don't want to waste too much time here. I already had a preset that I did, the vocal demo here. And I'm gonna start from here because it's clearer to know what is going on.
Rita, I'm knocking at your door every morning.
Okay.
Rita, I'm knocking at your door every.
So if I play that again, especially if you listen to the words Rita, you'll hear what it sounded like without this.
Rita, I'm knocking at your door every morning.
Then with.
Rita, I'm knocking at your door every morning, hoping that you can open up.
Okay, so I'm not going to say that that is perfect or great, but what it is that some of these lower frequencies are being compressed more. You're getting some of that honky sound out, and then when we get to the high frequencies, the compression is not really happening because this threshold is too high for what is going on, so it's not able to actually kick in. However, the expander has been exploited. You can see the threshold is very low. It's able, if I show it from here, it's very low, so it can actually allow things in. But unlike if you see here, where it's just the ratio is just 1, so whatever comes in is what goes out, here it is a high value. So the high frequencies have been expanded, their dynamics have been expanded. So in this context, whatever was a little bit loud within the very high frequencies has actually been accentuated. So if I solo this alone, you can hear that.
Rita, I'm knocking at your door every morning.
Yeah. And if we play it all together, I can be able to bypass this and then leave it back in, and then you can hear what difference it does, the fact that it has this expansion going on.
Rita, I'm knocking at your door every morning, hoping that you can open up. Rita, You got me on my knees.
And this helps it cut through. So these are subtle changes, but in the context of the song playing, they can actually make quite a difference, especially in different octaves. So when the vocal is singing in a higher register, different bands of the compressor are acting upon it more than when it's in a lower register, and then different bands act then. There's a falsetto here. And then you have things like this.
Knocking at your door every morning.
You know, they're like in a lower kind of thing. And then you got, oh. So those things can be dealt with differently. And if you see what is happening with the multiband here, it's acting differently in those parts.
Oh, I'm knocking at your door. Rita, I'm knocking at your door every morning, hoping that you can open up.
So I hope you get the idea of what that is doing. I think you get the point. You get the idea. Yeah, that introduced the multi-band compressor and being able to use it on your groups, being able to use it on your bass mix. In this case, it's the where all the music is going, which is here. But you know, people could put it like on the actual stereo out. Smack one there. That would be the thing. That maybe even the exciter will be there. So now it's even applied to my voice. You can hear that my voice has changed. And if you're compiling your mastering chain, this might be one of the things that you might use, like a multi-band compressor. There might still be an exciter, things like that, and eventually possibly a limiter there, and so on and so forth. A video on how the limiter works will follow shortly. Usually it's the last thing that you have in your mastering chain.
Rita, I'm knocking at your door every morning, hoping that you can open up. Rita, you got me on my knees. I'm serenading, hoping that you can hear. Tambude, tambude, katinzuze, motor. Rita, I'm knocking at your door every morning, hoping that you can open up. Rita, you got me on my knees. I'm serenading.
So yeah, we have looked at the multi-band compressor. Take your time to have a look at that in whatever DAW that you're using. Check it out and see what it can do. I'll do another specific lesson about the multi-band that is inside Studio One and also the one in Ableton. But for now, you can actually use the principles that we just gone through here. Even if you're using a different DAW, it will work just the same. Alrighty then, take care now.